Can the government actually ban the use of social media for all children under the age of 16? That seems to be the intention right now from the state of Karnataka and the state of Andhra Pradesh. Now, in his budget speech this week, the Chief Minister of Karnataka, Siddaramaiah, has announced that the state plans to ban social media use for children under the age of 16. It's an interesting goal, but can it actually work, and how can it be implemented? That's what we're looking at in this video. It's an interesting video for parents though. Like, share, subscribe, forward it to someone if you think that this is information that they will find useful. So this is what has happened today. The Karnataka government has proposed banning the use of social media for children under the age of 16. And this was made during the state budget speech. Now, the budget document itself says that the move is meant to prevent harmful effects of mobile phone usage among children. And the government argues that excessive exposure to social media platforms is affecting mental health, sleep patterns, attention span, and emotional development of children. They have not explained, though, how they plan to go about this in terms of legally actually action the ban and implement it. State Minister Santosh Lal has also acknowledged that monitoring what children do inside their homes, though, is going to become more and more difficult. Andhra Pradesh seems like it will follow almost immediately. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu has said his government is also considering restrictions on social media use for children. The proposal in Andhra Pradesh, though, is slightly different. The government is looking at banning social media for children under the age of 13 and possibly regulating access for teenagers between 13 and 16. Naidu said the policy will be announced in the next 90 days, which means that what began as one single announcement in Karnataka could potentially become a larger policy discussion across India. And a discussion is a very good thing. What will we do if each state announces a different sort of cap? If one says 16, one says 13, one says 14. I mean, implementing that is going to be completely crazy. I also want to point out this is not just an Indian debate. Several countries have already moved in this direction. You'll remember Australia has banned social media for children under the age of 16. Now in Australia, influencers who are under 16 have taken the government to court to overturn that. There's also France with similar restrictions introduced, requiring parental consent for younger users. China has gone even further and introduced something called the minor mode. This system places device level restrictions on how long children can use apps per day and what kind of content they can access. Basically, obviously, each app or each platform can do this on their own, but these are governments stepping in. And Indonesia has been the recent one, or the latest one, to announce a ban on social media accounts for children under the age of 16. Governments across the world are increasingly worried about psychological impact of social media for younger users. Let's take a look at India specifically, though. I want to look at evidence of whether or not the use of social media actually leads to issues. India's Economic Survey 2025-26 flagged digital addiction among young people, and it seemed odd because the economic survey is about how our economy is progressing, but it had a clear paragraph on this. But research from India shows that there's a clear link between heavy internet and social media use and poor mental health among young people, although most studies have stopped short of providing a direct causation. I must give you that. Now, one study said higher secondary students in Assam found that teenagers showed signs of internet addiction were far more likely to report stress, depression, and anxiety, and they have higher odds of depression, sometimes 14 times higher than those who are not addicted to their devices. One study in schools in Rajasthan found excessive internet use significantly associated with depression, anxiety, stress, psychosomatic complaints, particularly among adolescents, primarily through smartphones and social media. Indian research has showed that higher screen time is affecting children's emotional and social functioning. In 2025, more than 500 Indian school children were interviewed, and it found that the average daily screen time was over 3 hours for these children. Higher screen exposure is correlated directly with anxiety, behavioral issues, poor academic performance, along with less engagement for offline activities. National surveys have also pointed to a growing problem of sleep disruption linked to late night scrolling, and psychologists say that can worsen moods. Experts are also telling us that evidence in India mostly shows an association rather than a causation, which basically means that they are seeing that young people with depression and anxiety and other issues are also young people who may be overly using their phones or addicted to their phones, but they're not giving us a direct causation saying the use of phones is resulting in this. And that's the difference in this data that we should know specifically. Now, India faces obviously a serious issue of mental health challenges among young people. NCRB data shows us, and I want to take a minute when giving you this information because, again, we have to use the information carefully. There is no causation, but there is a problem. Over 13,000 student suicides were recorded in the year 2022. Now, this is national evidence and it doesn't put social media in connection to these suicides. Obviously, there is a lot of other issues in place in terms of mental health issues, struggle to cope with failure, struggle to cope with the pressure of what is expected of them in comparative examinations. All of these have a large role to play as well. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that India lacks comprehensive nationwide data. We lack a full understanding of mental health impact. We don't have the facilities and the infrastructure to treat and to help children who are going through this. So, can a ban on social media actually work? And do we have enough understanding of what the impact of the use of social media in order to come out and do a ban? Because imagine if you called a ban on all of Instagram, and Instagram lost this entire chunk of users, Instagram would take you to court. Meta would take you to court. And then do we have the data to back this is the question. That is one. Second, how are you ever going to implement it? Obviously, in order to enforce this ban, you will have to do an age verification of every single user, which means that social media platforms will have to actually verify the date of birth that is just now casually just entered. So technically, I could take my phone and I could create an account declaring whatever date of birth or age I wish to. There's no verification, right? So even in countries that have already introduced these bans, children have found ways around them because we know teenagers understand this world much better than the adults who are trying to regulate it. In Australia, some teenagers have admitted to simply creating new accounts with false birthdays. Experts point out to one more problem. Now in India, state bans on social media, if one state bans and another state does not, enforcement becomes even more difficult because then how do you identify the IP address, the location? We don't have the systems to be able to do that. There is, of course, a second contrary school of thought. In all of my videos, I give you both sides of the argument. This is the other argument. The arguments say that there is a bigger problem here, and that is of parenting or the lack of it. The children get access to smartphones through their families. Parents hand over phones to keep children occupied in restaurants and in other spaces, which means that banning social media for the government might not solve the underlying problem of what happens at home if parental support and restrictions are not already in place. Others argue that social media often offers opportunities for creativity, learning, and self-expression, and teenagers today use social media to build communities, to showcase talent, to access information. I mean, does YouTube qualify as social media? So all of the, say, educational videos that children could access on YouTube, will that no longer be available to them? See, right now, most children access through their parents' accounts. So it's really complex how we're actually going to, deal or tackle with this. India currently has a Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, where basically it says that companies must obtain verifiable parental consent for the use of data of children. But this is about data protection. It doesn't necessarily address the issue of social media addiction or device addictions. Karnataka's proposal would go much further in attempting to block children from social media. And we must remember, and I believe this is me personally, right? I don't think we have acknowledged or studied the impact that COVID had on us in different generations. And I think that when we started off saying, oh, children should not be given devices, and then during COVID, you said, okay, here it is, now you're on this device all day because your school is on this device, all your coaching classes are on this device, you're going to just be on the device all day. And I remember they were online classes for toddlers. why on earth? But this is what happened during COVID, and we put them on these devices formally, and now we're trying to take them out. So the real question at the heart of this debate is, social media companies have built platforms also, let's be honest, deliberately designed to be addictive. Endless scrolling, algorithmic feeds that figure out what you like, that send you more and more of that stuff, constant notifications. The systems are designed and engineered to keep you engaged and locked in for as long as possible. And children tend to be vulnerable users. So the government is asking if regulation is necessary at a time when technology tends to evolve a lot faster than the regulation. So it's going to be an extremely difficult environment, but I personally am extremely happy that the conversation has started. And as more and more countries across the world, are doing this, obviously there is a case here to consider what social media is doing to our children. I mean, very simply, anecdotally, right? When we were growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, yes, I'm that old, you were compared unfairly. Yes, each of us were compared to our siblings, to your annoying cousins who did well in school, and to maybe the kids at the end of the street and some of your friends. This was the whole universe that you were compared to. Why can't you be like this? Why can't you be like your sister? Why can't you be like so and so down the street? But right now with social media, you're comparing your life constantly with everyone in the world. I mean, the sheer pressure of what that does in terms of body image, what that does in terms of success, what that does in terms of, FOMO, and the fear of missing out, where you're constantly feeling like everybody else is living a better life than you. You constantly feel that there are experiences that you're missing out on, that your life is drab and drudgery and, not worth living. And this happens to fully grown adults. So how do we protect our children from this feeling? And I believe as a human race at this point, we need to tackle what this means. And while I appreciate the fact that various governments are now, including our central government and various state governments, are having this conversation, we must look at what this is doing to our children. On a side point, we should also look at how much time our senior citizens are spending on social media and what that is doing to them. But maybe that deserves a separate video entirely. So social media platforms continue to be powerful, but even though, I mean, we can't expect them to fully do what is necessary, because these are private entities. And as I keep saying, the private entity owes nothing to anyone except its shareholders. Its only job is to reward its shareholders with returns on their investment. So it doesn't owe you anything. All its purpose is to keep its users locked in for as long as possible. It's up to us as parents, as individuals, as larger society, and as governments to protect our children. And hopefully we're taking a step in the right direction. Let me know if you think that, I remember the last time we had a conversation about gaming, people said it's so unfair. Let me know if you think that my stance on this is unfair as well.